Now, we're starting to see what the question is that you will be asked before the next election about the voice to Parliament. Now, I want to check some of the back and forth in the detail here, Bronwyn, in a second. Apparently the question is, do you support an alteration of the Constitution that establishes an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice? Okay, yes, no, your particular view on all of that. Can I ask a dumb question, because that's my role occasionally from time to time, and it's my role on Twitter if you believe the haters. Can you change the Constitution with anything other than the text you're changing the Constitution with? Because I thought that was the point of a referendum, is that when you're changing the legal document, you're taking one set of words and striking and replacing with this set of words. This isn't a referendum, it's a plebiscite.
What they're proposing, as much as you can gather from what's being said, is that they want to put into the Constitution that there will be a voice to Parliament which will recommend on matters pertaining to...
Well, why isn't that the question?
Well, that will be the question.
Right, so all of this is just window dressing spin right now.
No, the problem is this, that the guts of who the people are, what the powers and the procedures will be, would be determined by legislation by the Parliament. That's the system.
Right.
But it is a dishonest question in the sense that there is no information being given out, which is the point that Peter Dutton was making. But the real question is this. If you change the Constitution in this way, then no longer is the Parliament the final determinant of what is the law of the land. You are handing that over to the High Court.
Right.
And nobody, but nobody, can tell you what the High Court will or will not decide in the future. And it is not bound by its own decisions. It can change its mind. And this was precisely the question that arose when we had the mini Bill of Rights, so-called, in 1988, when there was a wanting to put issues in pertaining to religion and tribe Algeria and so on. But at the end of the day, you had people reassuring people that it would not reopen the dogs case, for instance, with regard to funding for religious schools, but nobody can tell you what the High Court would do.
Because the whole point is that the Constitution to be interpreted by them.
The court will make an assumption that change was warranted and desired. So the answer is that, to me, Uluru has been very successful because there are now 11 voices in the Parliament, part of the debate, part of contributing, and we can see they're all different voices. There is no such thing as one voice.
So, Linda,
there are many voices, and so vote no.
So, Linda, the campaign begins. So, Linda, as somebody that is no doubt a passionate supporter, I guess, on this, the question that Bronwyn has raised is one that needs to be dealt with by the case for yes, doesn't it, rather than just the overall vibe of it? Because, elections have consequences, changes to constitutions have consequences, but it seems that as long as the government keeps it about the vibe, that's the best case for it to succeed.
Look, they've put out 3 specific amendments that would need to be made to the Constitution as part of the referendum. And so this will be, Bronwyn is right, the question to people to vote yes or no. I support the yes case. There should be a body, it would be called a voice, that the body can make representations to Parliament. And I think that's the really important set of words for people to remember. It's like we have, as I've said before, in local government authorities, we have so many around the nation, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander advisory groups. They make representations to the council. They all look actually quite different depending on the needs of our local communities. But when we're going to make a decision about, for example, in the City of Sydney, our local Indigenous community, we have a chat to our panel, we ask them what they think, and they're able to make representations to the council, and we take those views seriously, but ultimately the council makes the decision, and this is what the proposed voice is to be.
And then not in the
the final section is to ensure that the Parliament is able to make decisions about the details of the structure of the voice. And that, to me, seems the perfectly logical, clear thing to do. The naysayers, the people who campaign against every referendum, always make it so overcomplicated. Remember when we had the marriage equality plebiscite and there was all these doom and gloom stories about what would happen? And then the nation voted yes, and guess what? People got married. There
There's
was lots of love, and we all just went to more weddings, and that was
this is
boring.
the problem with the voice.
All right, come on, Warren.
The voice
is such a negative, complex view.
is a fraud from the beginning. The idea that no Aboriginal has a voice to Parliament today is just crap. I go down to Canberra every time there's there's hundreds of Aboriginals down there talking to government, talking to ministers, talking to the crossbenchers, talking to the opposition. There is not any piece of legislation dealing with Aboriginals that doesn't have Aboriginals sitting there today. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they have been sitting there and having these conversations. The thing I find bizarre, why do we need to have that in the Constitution? Because you know, that's what I'm very sinister about, why they're doing this.
What I'm interested in, and look, obviously you can't answer this, and I'm not posing it as a gotcha, but Linda, I'd be fascinated to know how often councils disagree with what the advice that comes from those bodies is, because that's part of the conversation. Is that if as part of laying the case for yes, needs to say, look, it's not a 100% conversion rate, whatever they say they get, but I'm imagining it's probably going to be higher than 80% here, Bronwyn. And again, why wouldn't it be a scenario where, I don't know, aircraft noise is something that needs to be negotiated? We're not just necessarily talking about names, flags, places.
No, we're not. And every piece of legislation impacts on Torres Strait Islanders and Aboriginal people because they are Australians by definition.
Correct.
So what we need to do is protect the Constitution because it protects us. And there is no reason why you can't have legislation about wanting to have another advisory body. But honestly, I think the referendum we need to have is to remove the race-making power from the Constitution.
Bronwyn,
take it away. We should not be able to make laws on the basis of race.
Bronwyn, they are Australian, of course, but they are also part of a group that, when you look at the statistics across the history of Australia,
violence situation that
Linda,
these
you're
divorces
telling
is
Warren,
going to fix.
who is of Aboriginal heritage, what he's got to do. How nonsensical.
Jobs. I've been in this game for all my life, and all I see is the same old people turning up and putting through these ideas. I tell you what works. If you treat people all the same, if you're able to get economic development and jobs in the communities and education programs moving, I can talk about one program that has put $6 to $8 billion into Aboriginal affairs. And it didn't cost the government hardly anything, and that was the Indigenous procurement policy. That's more money than the states and the federal government put into this, and as hiring people and getting things going. We don't need a voice. We already got our voice, and we're pushing ahead with it.
We hear it loud and clear.